In this video, we will dive into the movie Kraven the Hunter. We will discuss the movie story, summarize the plot, and explore the cast and characters. Additionally, we will cover the movie production details and box office performance. Finally, we will provide the reviews and personal reactions. Let's begin with the movie story. The film opens as Sergei Kravinoff, aka Kraven the Hunter, is being transported to a prison in Russia. After knocking out two inmates outside, he is brought to meet with crime boss Semyon Chorny. Kraven reveals himself, but Chorny says the hunter is just a myth. Kraven grabs a tooth of a tiger skin rug and proceeds to slash Chorny's goons before jamming the tooth in Chorny's neck. He kills another prisoner and uses him as a decoy before making him escape from the prison. The flashback jumps 16 years into the past to show a young Sergei and his brother Dmitry. They are picked up from school by their father, mob boss Nikolai Kravinoff. He informs his son that their mother has committed suicide, something that Sergei blames on Nikolai. Nikolai brings the boys on a hunt along with his team. They are joined by Alexei Satvish, who wishes to join Nikolai's empire, but Nikolai does not see him as being of any use to him. Nearby, a teenage girl named Calypso Easy is looking over tarot cards with her grandmother. The hunting party comes across a lion which attacks Sergei and almost fatally mauls him. Calypso sees this and treats his wounds, while a drop of the lion's blood falls into Sergei's body and begins to alter his DNA. The doctor at the hospital tries to save him but declares him dead. Moments later, Sergei altered DNA kick in and he comes back to life. Nikolai brings Sergei home almost immediately after he is revived. He decided to run away from home, leaving Dmitry to deal with their father. Sergei retreats to the woods, but he ends up in a field where a wild beast stampede. The animals run right past him, and one that is blocked by Sergei waits until the others have run past so it can keep moving. Moments later, Sergei finds most of the wild beast killed with their horns removed. He finds two hunters who threaten Sergei to leave. He picks up a knife off the ground and throws it into the older hunter's head before proceeding to beat the younger hunter to death with his bare hands. In the present, Kraven continues to go after criminals with enhanced animal-like abilities including hide and sight, smell, and forming a bond with animals. He gets a message from Dmitry asking if he will show up for his birthday. Kraven later finds a convoy of mercenaries and blocks them from entering an area to hunt animals. When they move ahead, Kraven enters their van and slaughters them, even biting one guy's nose off. The mercenary leader threats and runs to his employer thinking Kraven was dealt with, only to find Kraven sitting in the boss chair since he already killed him. Kraven fires a crossbow and impales the leader with an arrow before leaving. Calypso is now a liar. She learns that her close friend and colleague was murdered by guys working for Chorny. Kraven approaches her, revealing himself as the boy that she saved, and also informs her that he is the hunter that has been going off and killing major criminals like Chorny. Alexei is now a mercenary working with his Chorny Bihari. He learns of Kraven's exploits and sees this as an opportunity to move in on Nikolai's criminal empire. Alexei and Bahari approach other criminals to get them to work for him. When they refuses, Alexei shows off his mutation which causes his skin to harden and turn him into the Rhino, something he keeps off with a serum. Alexei gunmen kill all but two of the criminals and one of them kills the other to be employed by Alexei. Nikolai hosts a party for Dmitri's birthday at a nightclub where Dmitri works as a pianist and singer. The goon that joined Alexei approaches Nikolai and makes an attempt to have him killed, but Nikolai uses the goon as a human shield before a shootout occurs, leaving many of Alexei and Nikolai's men dead. Kraven later surprises Dmitri by showing up at his apartment. The two have a friendly dinner until Nikolai shows up to ruin things. Dmitri is later abducted by Alexei's goons. Kraven chases them on foot throughout the city, smashing his way through windows and scaling walls to catch up to them, but they manage to get away. Nikolai is later sent Dmitri's severed finger and is given 48 hours to deliver a $20 million ransom for Dmitri's return. Knowing his father will not go through with that, Kraven goes to Calypso for help in saving his brother. Knowing that Kraven will come after them, Alexei hires an assassin known as the Foreigner to come deal with him. The Foreigner is able to manipulate time so that he can do things like grab a gun out of an assailant's hand and shoot them with it. While they wait for his arrival, Alexei shows Dmitri his mutation and tells him how being the Rhino causes him physical pain. He mentions a doctor in New York, Dr. Miles Warren, to Dmitri that help him with his condition. Kraven helps Calypso escape her law firm when Alexei's goons go after her. They fly to the jungle where Kraven knows that Dmitri is being kept. They run into a white cat that Kraven knows as a cub, and he wrestles with her for a bit before he and Calypso keep moving. Once the Foreigner arrives, Alexei's goons keep an eye out for Kraven and learn he is nearby. The Foreigner confronts Kraven in the forest and shoots him with a dart containing a powerful toxin. It causes Kraven to hallucinate that he is being surrounded by spiders, the closest reference to Spider-Man that we get. The Foreigner hits him with two more darts and prepares to execute him until Calypso fires an arrow through the Foreigner's eye. She then uses her own voodoo elixir to heal Kraven and get him back on his feet. Alexei moves Dmitri along with a convoy. Kraven sends a wild beast stampede after them. Bihari gets thrown out of the van and impaled on horns. Alexei then allows himself to fully transform into the Rhino and engage in a showdown with Kraven. The two duke out in the middle of the stampede with Kraven unable to penetrate through Rhino's skin. When Rhino holds him up by the neck, Kraven spots the entry wound where Alexei injects the serum, and Kraven impales it, weakening Alexei. Kraven then ties him up in a wire and flings him into the stampede, causing him to get stampled. Alexei slowly succumbs to his wounds. Kraven later confronts Nikolai in the woods as it was he who sent Alexei's footage of Kraven escaping prison and alerting Alexei to his identity. This was all a plan for Nikolai to bait Kraven into killing Alexei, since Nikolai knows that Dmitri would be an easy target and that his brother would kill to get him back. In retaliation, Kraven quietly steals the bullets from all Nikolai's rifles and leave as a bear arrives to maul a defenseless Nikolai to death. Kraven later meets with Dmitri at the nightclub. They have a disagreement about the path their lives are taken, with Dmitri saying that Kraven is just like their father, another man hunting for a trophy. Dmitri starts to walk away and Kraven follows him, but when Dmitri turns around, he turns into his brother. Dmitri is now wearing a suit given to him by Dr. Warren. The suits allow the Mithri to shapeshift into anybody, making him the chameleon. The brothers battle part ways again. Kramer returns home and finds both a package and note from Nikolai. The note reiterates that Kraven is just like Nikolai, a hunter. Kraven then pulls out the gift, a vest with an animal pelt on it. Kraven puts it on and begins to stare at himself in the mirror. Marvel Dude Kraven the Hunter debuts on digital streaming this week. Kraven the Hunter, the Marvel box office just starring Aaron Taylor Jensen and Russell Crowe debuts on digital streaming this week. Kraven the Hunter opened in theaters on December 13. The official synopsis for the film read Kraven the Hunter is an action-packed, R-rated standalone story of how one of Marvel's most iconic villains come to be. Aaron Taylor Johnson plays Kraven, a man whose complex relationship with his ruthless gangster father Nikolai Kravinoff, played by Russell Crowe, starts him down a path of vengeance with brutal consequences, motivating him to become not only the greatest hunter in the world but also one of its most feared. Sony Pictures Entertaining Home Entertaining announced on Monday that Kraven the Hunter will debut on digital streaming via premium video on demand on Tuesday, January 14. Kraven the Hunter will be available to purchase and rent on such a digital platform including Prime Video, Apple TV, and Fandango at Home. For Prime Video, Kraven the Hunter will be available for purchase for $24.99 since digital rentals are generally $5 less than the purchase price on PVOD. Kraven the Hunter should be available to rent for $19 for a 48 hours period. What extras are included with the digital purchase of Kraven the Hunter? Per Sony Pictures Home Entertaining, the digital copy of Kraven the Hunter will include bonus features. Typically, these extras are only included on digitally purchased copies of films and not rentals. In addition to the film, Sony noted that the digital copy of Kraven the Hunter will include deleted and extended scenes, becoming Kraven Beast Mode, the stunts of the hunt, outtakes and bloopers, Kraven First Hunt, the direction, allies and antagonists, the killer cast. Per Sony, the bonus feature will also be included on the 4K Ultra HD and Blu-ray disc copies of Kraven the Hunter, which will be released on Tuesday, March 4. The DVD copy of Kraven the Hunter, which will also be released on March 4, will include 3 bonus features: outtakes and bloopers, Kraven First Hunt, the direction, allies and antagonist, the killer cast. Kraven the Hunter had a rough reception at the box office. Per the numbers, the film has earned $24 million domestically and $34 million internationally for a worldwide box office tally of $59 million against a $110 million production budget before prints and advertising. Rotten Tomatoes Critics Collective gave Kraven the Hunter a 70 Brotten rating based on 145 reviews. Viewers, however, gave Kraven the Hunter a 74% fresh rating on RT Popcometer based on 100 plus verified user rating. Kraven the Hunter, which is directed by J.C. Chandor and also stars Ariana, DeBose, Fresh Hashinger, Christopher Abbott, and Alessandro Nivola, debuts on PVOD on Tuesday. Kraven the Hunter 2024 could not even defeat Aaron Taylor Johnson's forgotten superhero bomb at global box office, having already sealed its fate as the lowest grossing installment of Sony's Spider-Man universe. The superhero film Kraven the Hunter is poised to emerge as one of the biggest bombs that the genre has ever seen. Not only will it fall significantly short of the franchise's worst-performing film, Madame Web, it will probably end up grossing around half of its reported production budget of $120 million. Directed by Oscar nominee J.C. Chandor, Kraven the Hunter will impact everybody involved, including star Aaron Taylor Johnson, who has been hovering at the edge of the A-list for quite some time now. With $23 million domestically and $35 million from overseas markets, Kraven the Hunter has grossed just $58 million worldwide so far. For context, Madame Web concluded its global run with around $100 million, while the similarly mocked Morbius crossed over $160 million worldwide. The movie seems like a blockbuster by comparison. Kraven the Hunter will likely fall short of the $96 million that Taylor Jensen's superhero film Kick-Ass grossed in its global run back in 2010. In fact, even the mostly forgotten Kick-Ass 2 cracked the $60 million mark globally. Kraven the Hunter generated just $1 million in its fourth weekend of release domestically, dropping out of the top 10. It probably has less than a million left in the tank at this point, which means that it will likely conclude its domestic run with under $25 million. By comparison, Morbius crossed nearly $40 million its opening weekend alone. Kraven the Hunter opened to negative reviews and appears to have settled at a rotten 16% approval rating on the aggregator website Rotten Tomatoes. This is in the same range as Morbius 15% and Madame Web 11%. Kraven the Hunter concludes Sony's Spider-Man universe. Sony's Spider-Man universe has been terribly uneven. None of its 6 films has managed to earn a fresh rating on Rotten Tomatoes, and only 3 entries have proven to be successful at the box office. All 3 of them belong to the Venom trilogy, which itself has contributed over $1.8 million worldwide. Also starring Christopher Abbott, Ariana DeBose, Alessandro Nivola, and Russell Crowe, Kraven the Hunter is on its way of theaters. Kraven the Hunter, the movie, released in 2024, and the movie performed very bad at the box office. Now the movie is available on online streaming platform. Marvel flop Kraven the Hunter already drops out of box office top 10. Kraven the Hunter, the critically mildined Marvel box office bomb starring Aaron Taylor Johnson and Russell Crowe, has dropped out of the box office top 10 in its third weekend in North American theaters. Rated R, Kraven the Hunter is the latest Sony Pictures Entertainment release about an auxiliary character in the studio Spider-Man movie universe. Previously, the studio released Morbius, Madame Web, and 3 Venom movies. According to the numbers, Kraven the Hunter earned an estimated $1.7 million over the weekend of a number 11 finish at the domestic box office. With this weekend stake per the numbers, Kraven the Hunter has earned $21.1 million domestically and $31 million internationally for a worldwide box office tally of $52 million against a $110 million production budget before prints and advertising. Released in theater on December 13, Kraven the Hunter, according to the numbers, earned $11 million in its first weekend at the domestic box office for a number 3 finish behind Moana 2 and Wicked, which earned $26 million and $22 million for the number 1 and number 2 spots respectively. Kraven the Hunter then solid to the number 7 spot on the December 2022 weekend box office with a domestic take of $3 million, which boosted its 10-day total to $17 million. Existing Sony CEO defends Kraven the Hunter. While Sony Pictures Entertainment's 3 Venom films starring Tom Hardy have been hits at the box office, including Venom The Last Dance in 2024, the studio was not nearly as fortunate at ticket counter with its other Spider-Man universe films released this year, Madame Web and now Kraven the Hunter. In an interview with Peace Out Gang CEO Tony Vesicora, the executive lamented the poor box office reception of Kraven the Hunter in a December 26 interview with the Los Angeles Times. Unfortunately, Kraven the Hunter that was launched last weekend and my last film launch is probably the worst launch we had in the 7 one pet 2 years, so that didn't work out very well, which I still don't understand because the film is not a bad film. Vizuquera told the LA Times Rotten Tomatoes critics didn't agree with Vizuquera, however, and gave Kraven the Hunter a 16% Rotten rating based on 140 reviews. Madame Web reception by viewers was even worse as it earned a dismal 11% Rotten rating from Rotten Tomatoes critics based on 266 reviews. Like Kraven the Hunter, Vizuquera defended Madame Web and blamed critics for the film's box office performance. Let's just touch on Madame Web for a moment. Madame Web underperformed in the theater because the press just classified it. It was not a bad film and it did great on Netflix, Vizuquera told the LA Times. For some reason, the press decided that they didn't want us making these films out of Kraven and Madame Web, and the critics just destroyed them. Vizuquera added they also did it with Venom, but the audience loved Venom and made Venom a massive hit. These are not terrible films, they just destroyed by the critics in the press for some reason. Kraven the Hunter 2024 movie performed bad at the box office. The movie was released in 2024 and Kraven the Hunter bombs with $11 million opening weekend, worst start of Sony produced Marvel films. Kraven may be the world's greatest hunter, but the comic book villain could not manage to climb to the top of box office charts. Sony's Kraven the Hunter, a superhero spin-off starring Aaron Taylor Johnson as Spider-Man's notorious foe, launched behind already low expectation at number 3 with 11 million from 3,211 theaters. It landed the worst debut for Sony's universe of Marvel character behind February's misfire Madame Web $15.3 million, as well as some of the franchise's lowest ever marks from critics and audience with a tragic 15% on Rotten Tomatoes and C grade on Cinema Score. That kind of reception signals that bearing a holiday miracle, Kraven will not rebound over the rest of December. At the international box office, Kraven the Hunter fared even worse, in 4th place among Hollywood, offering with $15 million from 21,500 screens in 60 markets. Kraven the Hunter is Sony's 3rd Spider-Man adjacent adaptation of the year, following October's Venom: The Last Dance. The Alien symbiote trilogy led by Tom Hardy has proven itself to be critic-proof and commercially successful. Although the 3rd and final movie didn't live up to the box of heights of its predecessors, Sony has otherwise yet to produce a comic book hit from its offshores led by tertiary Spider-Man buddies. The studio also stumbled in 2022 with Morbius, a vampire-inspired thriller with Jared Leto as the fanged villain, another one of Peter Parker in Famous Enemies. These ambitions began at a time when superheroes were all the rage at the box office. But ticket sales for too many recent comic book tentpoles have been decidedly earthbound. The long delay Kraven cost an upward of $110 million to produce. It was greenlit for $90 million but ballooned after last year's writers and actors strikes. It was co-financed by TSG, directed by G.C. Chandor. The R-rated films explore the origins of Sergei Kravinoff, the comic book character's alter ego, including his rocky relationship with his crime lord father Russell Crowe and his quest to become the greatest hunter. As the superhero genre has declined over the last 5 years, Morbius, Madame Web, and Kraven have led the race to the bottom, says David A. Gross, who runs the movie consulting firm Franchise Entertainment Research. Kraven's budget was downsized according to the realities of the market, but it's still too high for this kind of result. Also, this weekend, the Warner Bros. Anime fantasy film The Lord of the Rings: The War of Rohirrim stumbled in fifth place with 4.6 million from 2,602 cinema in its opening weekend. It carries a modest budget of $30 million, so any losses during its theatrical run will not be ruinous for the studio. Plus, box office riches were not necessarily the impetus of War of the Rohirrim, based on J.R.R. Tolkien's character and set 183 years before the events of Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings trilogy, getting the green light. The animated film was developed and fast-tracked to ensure that New Line Cinema did not lose the film adaptation right for Tolkien's novels, while Jackson and the teams behind the Lord of the Rings and Hobbit trilogies were working on two new live locations films for 2026 and beyond. The first of those movies, tentatively titled Lord of the Rings: The Hunt of Gollum, will be directed by and star Andy Serkis. War of the Rohirrim, which has mixed reviews and a typed B on cinema scores, faltered last weekend in its international box office debut with just $2 million from 31 territories. It expanded to 42 additional offshore markets over the weekend. Despite the two newcomers, Disney's managed to retain the number one spot on domestic box office charts for the third consecutive weekend with $26 million from 4,000 theaters. The Polynesian-set animated adventure, which was originally commissioned for streaming, has become a theatrical smash with $337 million in North America and $717 million globally so far. It's already the year's fifth biggest grossing movie domestically and fourth biggest global release. Universal Wicked adaptation earned more than double that of Kraven, even though the big budget musical has already been playing in the theater for a month. Wick stayed in second place with a dazzling $22 million from 3,689 venues in its fourth weekend of release. The film, starring Ariana Grande and Cantillaro, has generated $359 million domestically and more than $524 million worldwide to date. It's the highest grossing Broadway adaptation in domestic box office history, ahead of 1978 Grease $188 million, as well as the second biggest worldwide stage-to-screen reimagining after 2008's Mamma Mia $611 million. Paramount's Gladiator 2 landed in the number 3 spot with $7.8 million in its fourth film, the quarter century in the making sequel to Ridley Scott's Oscar-winning 2000 epic Gladiator has earned $145 million in North America and more than $398 million globally. Heading into the coveted Hollywood frame, overall box office revenues are 4.8% behind 2023 and 23% behind 2019 according to ComScore. Manitou and Glicked, the parameter for the two films with twin release dates and spiritual sequel of Barbenheimer, will continue to rule at multiplexes until Christmas when Disney's The Lion King prequel, Mufasa, Paramount's Sonic the Hedgehog 3 and A24 erotic thriller Baby Girl all open on December 20. A few days later, the Focus feature Nosferatu remake and Searchlight Bob Dylan biopic A Complete Unknown starring Timothy Chalamet land on December 25 to close out the year. Until then, it will be all Mona, Glinda and Elphaba all the time. Kraven the Hunter suffers massive drop in box office sales drop and its second week. Kraven the Hunter continued to set a new record for the Sony Spider-Verse, but not exactly in the way Sony had hoped. Starring Anna Taylor-Johnson as the title character, the film debuted at $11 million domestically, which is lower than the previous lowest opening for a Sony Marvel film. Madame Web opened earlier in 2024 with a disastrous 15.4 million, but it still fared better than Kraven. Taylor Johnson's latest outing fought steep competition with both Mana 2 and Wicked outperforming the film by over double the profits despite being in their third and fourth weekend respectively. In its second weekend, Kraven failed to perform any better. Per deadline, the film suffered at a substantial 72% drop in ticket sale, which makes the possibility of the film making back its budget. Kraven cost around 120 million to make, and its current box office total domestically sits as roughly 17 million as of Sunday, December 22. Globally, it is sitting at $42 million. Unfortunately, with popular release like the Sonic the Hedgehog 3 performing well heading into the Christmas season, Kraven is unlikely to regain any momentum. What Kraven the Hunter box office decline means. Kraven is currently on its 10th day of release with about 17.4 million. By comparison, Madame Web was at 28 million on its day 10, while Morbius did 57 million in the same time frame. The Venom trilogy performed the best of the Sony Marvel film on this metric by a mile with 142 million, 141 million and 89 million by each franchise entry's 10th day in theater. As a result, it is highly improbable for Kraven to be a financial success or to make back its budget. Beyond its low numbers compared to the other Sony Marvel films, Kraven is being trampled by other films at the box office currently. This weekend it was outtaken by new releases Sonic the Hedgehog 3 and Mufasa among others. The film has dropped down to 7th domestically, putting it behind previous release Wicked, Moana and Gladiator 2. Our take on Kraven the Hunter's box office decline. Kraven's box office numbers, while disappointing, are not surprising. Sony's tragedy of making Spider-Man films without Spider-Man has had severely diminishing returns, so it is hardly a shock that the latest entry in the franchise is the lowest. Moreover, the reason it is so much lower likely correlates to it being rated R. Regardless of the merits of making Kraven rated R, it likely struggled with a December release date because it was surrounded by more family-friendly release for the holiday season, and its main competition in the area of rated R, adult-oriented films being Gladiator 2 certainly did not help. Either way, Kraven is ending the current slate of Sony Marvel films not with a bang but with a whimper. Kraven the Hunter's troubles continue with second weekend drop at box office. Sony's Kraven the Hunter, which hit theater on December 13, is spotting at the box office with earning a $42 million worldwide with $17 billion coming domestically. Collider report that the Spider-Man universe film has failed to earn even half of its reported $110 billion budget. At Kraven the Hunter's current pace, it would be a stroke of luck if the movie reached the $60 million mark by the end of its theatrical run. For comparison, the much maligned Madame Web 2024 earned $100 million globally, with 43 of that coming domestically. The Jared Leto-led Morbius 2022 would end up earning $160 million worldwide. Thus far, Kraven the Hunter is falling behind both of those movies, all three of which have rotten score on reviews aggregator Rotten Tomatoes. Kraven currently has a 15% score, as does Morbius, while Madame Web has a score of 11%. Makes Madame Web look like a masterpiece. Kraven the Hunter stars Aaron Taylor Johnson as the titular Kraven and Oscar-winning Russell Crowe, and is distributed by Oscar nominee J.C. Chandor. In its debut, the film opened with a less than stellar $4.7 million from Friday and preview screenings, which set a record low for Sony's Marvel movies. The next lowest movie, Madame Web, earned $6 million in that same time frame earlier this year. The reviews for Kraven the Hunter were mixed at best, with CBR's Howard Wallstein saying in a review of the film that it means Madame Web looked like a masterpiece, but the movie's audience score is a much more respectable 73% with much more than 1000 ratings. The future of the SSU, with the poor performance of the recent Sony Spider-Man universe movies minus the success of the Tom Hardy lead Venom franchise, leaves the question of whether Sony's Spider-Man universe is still viable. Sony insiders have said privately that movies like Kraven the Hunter, Madame Web, and Morbius have been creative and critical failures, but in the future, Variety insiders say the studio will need to be more dissenting about which Spider-Man characters should be spun off into their own individual movies. Not featuring Spider-Man in the SSU was a fatal flaw. Exhibitor relationship analyst Jeff Bock said this about Sony's Spider-Man universe. Unfortunately for Sony, they had a taste of success with Venom, and that kind of spelled everything for them. Because they thought they could just spin off all these characters, I don't think they realized that Venom could carry a franchise. Whereas these other characters could not. To not have Spider-Man in these films was the fatal flaw. The Spider-Man films led by Tom Holland as Spider-Man, Peter Parker, a partnership with Marvel Studios, had Kevin Feige, and former Sony Pictures head Amy Pascal, have been successful for Sony, grossing $3.9 billion globally. However, Spider-Man has never appeared in any of the SSU movies. According to a report, Sony's deal with Disney never precluded Sony from using Spider-Man in its movies that didn't bear his name. Beck said that Sony in the future could move forward with another SSU film that could finally introduce Spider-Man even if it was not the version played by Holland. You could hire a different Spider-Man, it doesn't have to be Tom Holland. Kraven the Hunter is currently in movie theaters. Kraven the Hunter box office numbers, total worldwide domestic opening and records. Kraven the Hunter box office number from its opening weekend haul to its total worldwide gross could solidify or reverse the decision to end the Sony Spider-Man universe. The ending of Kraven the Hunter left the titular character off with the potential for future stories, but news broke before the movie's release that this may have been a futile decision. The future of Sony's franchise after Kraven is all but non-existent, placing the 2024 film in an interesting position regarding its box office haul, with Sony instead sets to focus on other upcoming Spider-Man movies like Spider-Man Beyond the Spider-Verse and the MCU Spider-Man 4. Kraven the Hunter has the task of proving this a wise decision or not. After all, Kraven the Hunter could become an unexpected hit for Sony, reigniting hope that the movies of the Sony Spider-Man universe will continue to be produced post-2024. Of course, this entirely depends on how Kraven the Hunter performs at the box office, calling into security its opening weekend, international haul, and worldwide total. Kraven the Hunter's total box office so far. At the time of writing, Kraven the Hunter has just concluded its first weekend at the box office. Unfortunately for Sony Pictures, the numbers being reported concerning the film's return are less than promising. As per a report by Variety, Kraven the Hunter slumped to a lowly 11 billion box office haul thus far. Kraven the Hunter's worldwide opening weekend was only $15 million, taking the film's total as of its 3-day debut to $26 million. Kraven the Hunter opening weekend box office. At alluded to, Kraven the Hunter's opening weekend haul is the only box office number that has been devilish for Kraven the Hunter thus far. The aforementioned $11 million figure is what the movie earned over its 3-day opening across the United States and Canada. The dismal box office performance of Kraven the Hunter is not limited solely to domestic markets. The film opened in most international countries on the same date as its United States debut, yet did not show to be any more popular overseas. Kraven the Hunter earned a lowly $15 million internationally, which is undoubtedly not enough to reverse its fortune as a flop for Sony Pictures. The reason for this stems entirely from Kraven the Hunter's budget. Kraven the Hunter has a worldwide gross of only $26 million in its opening weekend, showing no sign of the legs needed. In comparison to the other Sony Spider-Man universe movies, Kraven the Hunter was one of the more expensive. The film cost Sony $110 million, with some outlets even reporting it rose to $130 million. This is sufficiently larger than the $75 to $83 million budget of Morbius and the $80 million of Madame Web. Although Kraven the Hunter budget is somewhat consistent with the Venom movies, the latter performed well enough to turn a profit. Kraven the Hunter has a worldwide gross of only $26 million in its opening weekend, showing no sign of the legs needed to push past its considerable budget. How Kraven the Hunter's box office compares to other Sony Marvel movies. So, what is perhaps more surprising and indeed concerning about Kraven the Hunter box office number is how they compare to the other Sony Spider-Man universe movies. Firstly, it is worth comparing Kraven the Hunter's opening weekend haul with the most successful debut in the SSU from the Venom movies. 2018 Venom opening in October 2018 to a successful $80 million domestic haul when combined with the $120 million earned in overseas territories. Venom pulled in a very impressive $200+ million worldwide opening, showing just how inferior Kraven's was. Kraven the Hunter was never expected to outperform the Venom trilogy at the box office given the latter series' success. Venom Let There Be Carnage only improved on its predecessor opening weekend, grossing $90 million. This is almost 10 times larger than Kraven's debut, with even the franchise's lowest $55 million debut of Venom The Last Dance vastly dwarfing the opening of the former. Admittedly, Kraven the Hunter was never expected to outperform the Venom trilogy at the box office given the latter series' success. However, it was expected to far better than Morbius and Madame Web, which are two of the biggest, more notorious box office flops of all time regarding superhero cinema. Despite only earning a worldwide total of $160 billion by the end of its run, Morbius' debut was not awful. The film earned $39 million over its first 3 days in the United States and Canada, almost 4 times more than Kraven the Hunter. Conversely, Madame Web did not open well, earning only $15 million across its domestic debut. This puts into a perspective how poor Kraven the Hunter domestic opening truly is. The expectation was never for the film to outpace Venom at the box office, but it should have fared better than Madame Web at the very least. What Kraven the Hunter box office means for the franchise. Naturally, the most pressing question coming out of Kraven the Hunter opening weekend is what these box office numbers mean for the Sony Spider-Man universe as a whole. Prior to Kraven the Hunter release, it was revealed by the rap that the film would mark the end of the franchise. Despite this report, Kraven the Hunter could easily have kick-started a new wave of Spider-Man adjacent film from Sony had it proved to be a hit for the studio. After all, this scenario would have made it the first truly profitable SSU movie beyond those of the Venom trilogy. Venom Rotten Tomatoes critic score are 30%, Rotten Tomatoes audio score are 80%. Venom Let There Be Carnage Rotten Tomatoes critic score are 58% and Rotten Tomatoes audience score are 84%. Morbius RT critic score are 15% and RT audience score are 71%. Madame Web RT critic score are 11% and RT audience score are 55%. Venom The Last Dance Rotten Tomatoes critic score are 41% and audience score are 81%. Kraven the Hunter Rotten Tomatoes critic score are 15% and audience score are 73%. However, Kraven the Hunter box office may prove that the Sony Spider-Man universe is truly over. This is not only comes as a result of spin-off like Morbius, Madame Web, and now Kraven flopping, but also thanks to the status of the Venom series, Venom The Last Dance ending teased more for the franchise. Most notably, the inclusion of a major Marvel villain like Null being an antagonist of the future. Beyond that, the Venom's future grew increasingly unclear. As of the movie's conclusion, Venom was dead and Eddie Brock was left without his partner. This means that Sony, lest the studio decide to resurrect their flagship character, has no hope of true box office success in the near future where the Sony Spider-Man universe is concerned. The lolly box office returns of Morbius, Madame Web, and Kraven the Hunter have proven this. The latter movie may have seen Sony's last push at having a successful franchise beyond Venom, especially with box office booster in place like an R rating and a big star in Aaron Taylor Johnson. Nonetheless, Kraven the Hunter has failed, effectively ending Sony's Spider-Man universe before it ever truly got going. Kraven the Hunter review. I am frustrated by how much Aaron Taylor Johnson's Marvel superhero movie squanders its potential. Aaron Taylor Johnson is not new to Marvel movies, having played the MCU's Quicksilver in 2015 Avenger Age of Ultron, but Kraven the Hunter in his first opportunity to lead one. And while he turns in an entertaining performance, the latest installment of Sony's Spider-Man universe never lives up to its potential. Previously, the movies in Sony's Spider-Man universe have been a mixed bag, while Tom Hardy's Venom films have been generally well received and done solidly at box office. Jared Leto Morbius and Dakota Johnson's Madame Web bombed in every way a movie possibly can. For Kraven the Hunter, director G.C. Chandor took some big swings. The movie is valiant enough to earn an R rating, which already put it at odds with typical superhero fare. Most movies might earn a PG-13 rating for sci-fi violence, but ultimately they remain relatively family-friendly. Kraven the Hunter, however, features some of the most violent kills I have ever seen in superhero movies, and I have seen every Deadpool movie. But where sees Deadpool violence is offset by how much Kraven the Hunter leans into its titular character's brutality with every bloody character. Further, Kraven the Hunter is a truly standalone Marvel movie, acting any kinds of tie to other films in Sony's franchise in the age where superhero movies are tasked with including commercial for the next film in the franchise. Kraven the Hunter is built to exist on its own, which is an undoubtedly admirable endeavor. However, it would have been more admirable if the standalone movie had a stronger script and better character development to go along with the decently enjoyable action scenes and Taylor Johnson's requisite superhero apes. Kraven the Hunter has too many characters. Kraven the Hunter has a surprising number of Marvel characters for a movie meant to be a single anti-hero's origin story. There is of course Sergei Kravinoff and his little brother Dmitry, both of whom fear and respect their father, the crime lord Nikolai Kravinoff. Much of the movie's first act focuses on establishing the relationship between the three Kravinoffs, but it still remains a thinly sketched dynamic steeped in so much unpacked toxic masculinity that it becomes frustratingly right. Therein lies my biggest frustration with the film. The movie set itself up to deconstruct the idea that men should only ever be strong, and if they are not para, daters they are prey and therefore weak, which is inherently harmful to men like Dmitri who don't fit into that paradigm. And while much of Kraven's journey is about becoming a different man than Nikolai to walk a path of masculinity that's not toxic because it emphasizes empathy, the movie's ending completely undergoes all of that. It reaffirms the paradigm in ways that, quite frankly, are baffling for these characters. Of course, there's also the problem that because Kraven the Hunter includes so many characters and spends so much time developing them, title little is left for Sergei and Dmitri, which may account for their perplexing turn in the end. Not only do we get their origin stories as Kraven and Chameleon, respectively, the movie also explores the origin of Reno and Calypso and even has a scene detailing the backstory of the foreigner. There are so many characters crammed into the movie, and none of them are fully developed. Kraven the Hunter's story is overwhelmed by superhero action. While the action set pieces are entertaining, I get the distancing impression the movie story was constructed around what the filmmaker thought would make for cool action scenes. The story exists in service of setting up these scenes rather than the action working to develop the story and characters. To be clear, there's nothing wrong with big superhero action set piece, but it obvious Kraven the Hunter wants to be grounded character film, and this is impossible when it includes action scenes that don't serve the story. The result is a poorly executed superhero movie with very little personality beyond Taylor Jensen's charms. Sure, Nevola is a surprisingly delightful character as Reno, and Abbott brings some quiet manic to the foreigner, but even they and Taylor Johnson's cannot distract from the shallowness of the story and characters, which seems to be the consequences of the filmmakers wanting to have their superhero action scene cake and eat it too. It's frustrating because there is so much potential in Kraven the Hunter, but at every turn it's squandered. The result is a poorly executed superhero movie with very little personality beyond Taylor Jensen's charm. As such, it cannot in good conscience recommend it except to those who solely enjoy superhero movies for the action scene, and particularly if you like bloody and violent R-rated action. I will say that any fans of Taylor Jensen's will be satisfied by just how charming and enjoyable he is. I was surprised by how much chemistry he has with everyone in the film. I simply wanted so much more of that, but if neither of those things sounds appealing, Kraven the Hunter doesn't make a good case for why it's a must-watch Marvel movie. Unfortunately, that's the risk of creating a standalone superhero movie. It has to stand on its own, and Kraven the Hunter does not. Kraven the Hunter is in theater on December 13. The film is 127 minutes long and rated R for strongly bloody violence and language. Kraven the Hunter, Sony's Lost Toothless Hunts. I don't like Kraven the Hunter. No, I'm not talking about Sony's latest Marvel spin-off or the film's main character that Aaron Taylor-Joy plays. All in due time. I am talking about the original character from Marvel Comics, while not the worst view in Spider-Man's prestige Ruff's gallery. Kraven is also far from the best. You have seen a character like him 1,000 times before, an elusive hunter who has grown tired of hunting regular prey, so he decides to go full most dangerous game and hunt Spider-Man of all people. Some would argue that making a Kraven movie without Spider-Man is as silly as making a Venom movie without Spider-Man. But that's the world we live. Still, I'd argue that the former is a tight concept with or without our favorite web slinger. I'd personally much rather see Spideyface and a testing villain like the dangerously trained Green Goblin or the brilliantly malicious Dr. Octopus instead of some one-note Russian guy who hunts things for the sake of it. That's not the only reason Sony's latest and possibly final attempt to craft a Spider-Man villain spin-off without Spider-Man Kraven the Hunter is fighting an uphill battle. While Kraven is a bit more of a recognizable character than Mobius and Medium Web, he is still a far cry from the massively popular Venom, not to mention just mere hours before my screening of Kraven the Hunter reports begin circulating that Sony is allegedly pulling the plug on its Spidey villain spin-off altogether after Kraven the Hunter. It's abundantly clear as to why that is, as this is yet another Spider-Man villain spin-off that is narratively empty, technically baffling, and above all is fundamentally misinterpreting the character it's adapting. Kraven the Hunter follows the epic hunt of Sergei Kravinoff, who begins this story as a young man living in the shadow of his abusive father Nikolai, played by Russell Crowe. After a tragic hunting accident leaves Sergei mauled by the ferocious lion, he is suddenly given superhuman senses, agility, and strength. He is also given a more noble purpose of protecting nature from criminals and poachers, and soon his valiant ways catch the attention of a fearsome villain known as the Rhino. Kraven the Hunter performance will not satisfy comics fans or moviegoers. Even after I have solidified myself as part of the anti-Kraven fan club, I can safely tell you that this is not a comic accurate representation of the title character. Where the comic book character is known for being a selfish trophy killer, this version tries to make him a noble animal lover. Taylor Jensen's interpretation honestly has more in common with Tarzan than the Marvel villain. Still, just because something is not accurate to the comics doesn't make it automatically bad. Does the film version of Kraven at least work on his own merits? Well, while Aaron Taylor Johnson does put his action chops on display, Kraven as a character is not terribly interesting. His dynamic with his estranged father and beloved half brother is practically thrown out the window when the film reveals Kraven is still around his family pretty often. The supporting cast is not much better. The Academy Award winner Ariana DeBose as Calypso coming out with the worst of it. Acclaimed actors phoning things in for a paycheck is nothing new of the superhero genre. Still, it's disappointing to see DeBose, who gave an impressive performance in West Side Story, relegated to some incredibly stiff line deliveries as a barely developed character. It's not very clear why Kraven needs Calypso's help, since he is supposed to be the world's greatest hunter. In the comics, Calypso is a magical sorceress, but here she is just a liar who happens to have a potion on her once or twice. Then there's Alessandro Nivola as Reno, who might just be the most over-the-top villain in a Marvel movie since Colin Farrell as Policia in Daredevil. Much like the majestic mammal he is named after crashes across on the savannah, Nivola is gleefully chewing up the scenery every time he appears on screen, with him constantly going off on bizarre charismatic tangent and acting needlessly creepy around all the underlings. There's even a downright hysterical moment when Nicola completely unprompted makes what I can only describe as a sound which probably sounds incredibly weak, but I genuinely don't know how to describe it beyond that. I don't think I can call the character or the performance good, but I will say that Nivola's performance as Reno does bring some much needed entertaining value, whether it's ironic or not. There's also another villain in the film with Christopher Abbott, the foreigner, who is just all short of bizarre. Not only in this character just an odd choice to include seriously dozen of Spider-Man villain to choose from, and this is who you went with. But they also have a superpower that practically makes them an overpowered, unbeatable god without any real explanation. If you are not decently familiar with the comic character who is somehow more obscure than big wheel, you will be completely lost as to who this person is and how his powers work. In fact, basically none of the superpowered character of Kraven the Hunter ever get definitive answer to their out of nowhere abilities. Why does the Kraven have the loose ability to talk to animals? Some portion did it. Why does Reno turned into a Reno? Some off-screen director did it. Why does that one secret character have the ability to control time itself? It is anybody guess, which gives you an idea of how barely decipherable Kraven the Hunter plot is. Glaring technical issue plot Kraven the Hunter. By far the most apparent issue in Kraven the Hunter is how bleedingly apparent the movie's delays and reshoots were. You thought Fantastic had some continuity errors or that Josh Whedon's Justice League was not consistent with the original vision. Kraven the Hunter might not just be the new champion of an inconstant blockbuster, as not even Spidey webs can patch up a film edit that is falling apart at the seams. Kraven the Hunter is a representation of everything that's wrong with the term "we'll fix" in the post-production. A good percentage of the movie is character interaction on a green screen or ADR for off-screen dialogue. At least it's mostly off-screen, but sometimes we get treated to some of the worst dubbing I have ever seen in a major motion picture. I swear there was a moment or two where I could see the green hue of the green screen because it was not keyed properly. I suspect the conscious tweaking of the film is also why Kraven the Hunter's much publicized art rating feels like it was an afterthought. The majority of the film's few F-bombs come after off-screen ADR and the blood and gore effects are almost entirely CGI. Apart from a brief but admittedly cool action scene in the third act that turns up the violence, I'd be very surprised if Kraven the Hunter was made with an R rating in mind from the start. Speaking of CGI, just about every digital effect in Kraven the Hunter is laughably unconvincing. All the animals look like cartoon characters and the non-real animals don't fare much better. Even something as conceptually simple as gunshot wounds look so incredibly fake that a mere tiny prosthetic would probably have been a better creative choice. Kraven the Hunter proves Sony never learned its lesson with Venom, Morbius, and Medium Web. It's been said before and I'll say it again. Who are these movies even for? Spider-Man fans will not like Kraven the Hunter because the film is almost completely detached from the comic books. Casual film fans will not like it either because on a fundamental filmmaking level, Kraven the Hunter makes some elephant-sized missteps. Despite directly setting up a sequel, Kraven the Hunter doesn't even feature a single end-credit scene, even though the scene from the trailer where Kraven is in a forest with his classic costume was almost certainly what the end credit scene was supposed to be, as it is not in the film. That alone seems like a pretty clear indication that the shop is starting to close up. With a whopping 5 poorly critically received movies in a row, Kraven the Hunter really should have been the last attempt to right the ship. Instead, the film repeats the exact same mistake that have been pointed out over and over again since the first Venom film. It's almost like a versus completion of all those movies' mistakes, with the poorly conceived idea of Venom, the barely coherent story of Morbius, and the baffling technical problems of Medium Web. This might sound like a dogpile on Sony, and while I do think this spin-off series was a poorly developed concept, the reputable production company still deserves a lot of credit for their positive contribution to the genre. The Spider-Verse films alone are evidence that they can produce quality content, if not also movie that Marvel Studio would never have made. Not to mention the future of the Spider-Man IP is looking bright with Spider-Man Beyond the Spider-Verse, Tom Holland's Spider-Man 4 and the Spider-Man Noir series, which if that earlier report is to be believed is what the company will be putting their focus into from now. Only time will tell, but Sony and the creative team behind these films seems to be taking the feedback in stride to make something constructive, and that's what the primary goal of criticism should be: constructive change. Do I wish Kraven the Hunter was a much better superhero movie? Of course, but the seeming evidence that the film's flaws are so apparent that it will lead to better films in the future is worth nothing. Kraven the Hunter movie reviews. The latter started about 20 minutes into my screening of Kraven the Hunter, and it was not the kind of laughter that anyone who is devoted months or years to making a film wants to hear. But more than Russell Crowe's silly Russian accent, more than Fred Hatchinger's lip sensing of piano bar standards like Harry Styles' Sign of the Times, more than the rumble of Aaron Taylor Johnson's stomach hungry for anything other than the boiled chicken and rice that he must have mailed for months to achieve his ridiculously sculpted abs. Laughter is the sound that will be associated with the follow-up to Madame Web Morbius and the Venom trilogy. Say what you will about the flagging quality of the Marvel Cinematic Universe as of late, but Sony's Kraven hold for applause exercise is keeping its Spider-Man movie lessons alive is worthy only for your ridicule, and certainly not the 137 minutes you are being asked to waste, or what I can only praise the final attempt to beat this dead horse of a cinematic universe. Seeing as Kraven's so anti-animal cruelty here, it would be only right. With the structure shamelessly ripped from Batman Begins, Kraven the Hunter first act alternates between past and present, introducing Sergei Kravinoff, played by Aaron Taylor Johnson, as a mythical hunter not for animals but for criminals. As a boy, Sergei and his half-brother Dmitry live in fear of their Russian mobster dad Nikolai, played by Russell Crowe, who espouses the importance of strength and glitches masculinity in the face of life challenges by taking his boy on a hunting trip to Ghana after a family tragedy. It's here that young Sergei's empathy for animals is first demonstrated, as his hesitation to participate in his father's hunt sets off a bizarre sequence of events that grant him the speed of a lion, the strength of a lion, the eyes of a lion, and the ability to command the animal kingdom of a lion, a transformation illustrated with a cheap-looking vision quest full of irrelevant drones superimposed over stock nature footage. Remember when Nightwolf teaches Liu Kang about animalities in Mortal Kombat Annihilation? That's the vibe. Kraven the Hunter's computer-generated animal allies don't look much better. They don't need to look as good at the wildlife in the upcoming Mustafa the Lion King is get the point across, but there's a soulless eyes and junky animation are constant distractions. That's also true in the present day storyline. The prison escape opener hint that maybe Sergei's ability could open the door for some good cinematic savagery in the action scene. The hope is short-lived. He jumps and slides around, slashing throat and scalping walls with ease. He even bites one poacher's nose off and spites it at other good clean off the way the action movie's gods intended. Taylor Johnson is a capable performer when it comes to the very physical one-on-one brawls. But Kraven the Hunter relies far too heavily on the low end by comic book movie standard super strength of Sergei, which we have seen too many examples of to be impressed by, and bafflingly less so on his way more interesting power to commune with animal modulation of the character's comics based skill at timing them. It seems contrary to the idea that Sergei only ever uses animals as tools in fight, seldom watching their backs or displaying any care for their well-being, which again is supposed to be this movie's big twist on the character. Never does the Craven effectively connect Sergei's supposed affection for a creature weaker than he, like Besson or his brother, to his choices or toxic in battle. In fact, the film undercut that affection, meddling Sergei's code by having his action put animals and innocent people at risk constantly. It's the Kravinoff family dynamic that provides the only semblance of narration and narrative tension, with Nikolai manipulating his son's love for one another in ways that could have given the story some weight, especially given the believable chemistry between Taylor Jensen's Strike Sergei and the nervous sensitivity for Hatchinger's Dmitri. And yet director J.C. Chandor seems completely disinterested in plumbing this anti-hero conception of the comic book villain for any nonce. It seems that Chandor, who made A Most Valiant Year, one of the more thoughtful mob movies of the last decade, is completely out of this depth in balancing the comic book concepts with the real world aspect of the story, and so there's really nothing to hold our interest in either the plot or the action scenes. And what's more, the action actually gets worse as Kraven the Hunter drags on. A third act encounter with a bunch of encroaching gangsters cuts its way through a nondescript forest as so many superhero movies before it have, and I do mean cuts. The editing in this sequence reeks of an attempt to salvage fight choreography that was not covered properly during production, and there's very little cause and effect relationship sustained as Sergei bonds between heavies. Sergei has an ally in lawyer Calypso, a factionary character whose fate is unconvincingly intertwined with this. Sergei and Calypso's meeting early in life and a reunion later in adulthood is just one of the many examples of the passionately wrote script assuming that no one cares about writing logic in a comic book movie. Kraven the Hunter tells us that Sergei is superhuman and the best hunter in all the world in one moment. I am faster than Karma and sends him asking an officer of the court for help tracking someone the very next. Maybe that was the point that even the strongest need sport. If so, wow, is that point not made successfully? Laughter is the sound that will be most closely associated with Kraven the Hunter. The cast deserves a lot of sympathy there. Taylor, Johnson's Gross, Hatchinger, DeBose, they are all working with material that is leagues below them, constrained by and overly serious tone that's out of step with the inherently ridiculous trapping of the story of a man who can talk with animals, something that even the Aquaman movies understood is more than a little silly. DeBose and actor dubbing with Krishma is especially ill-served, although I guess for a movie so inept at dramatizing the pitfalls of toxic masculinity, it only makes sense that the stole female character of note should be written so one-dimensionally. The antagonists have a little more leeway, with Alessandro Nivola's nerdy gangster Reno scratching at the campy energy Kraven the Hunter so desperately could have used, including one moment where he straight up hisses when his plans go awry again. I deciding laughed. I am not sure the filmmakers intended. Reno is moving in on Nikolai's priority after some shakeup in the criminal underworld, but the details of this rivalry and how Sergei, who's estranged from his family, comes to be caught in the middle of it are always rushed past, and the stakes of that nondescript conflict never engender any excitement. Kraven the Hunter takes aim at turning Sergei Kravinoff into a pro-animal anti-hero, points its crossbow at its own foot, and pulls the trigger. Sony latest and prayerfully last attempt to stage a live-action superhero movie using Spider-Man character and not Spidey himself in one of the worst of the modern era. Standing good actor in an awfully bland action movie that cost $100 million more than it looked like it was made for. As a critic, I was privileged enough to see Kraven the Hunter free of charge, but I am donating the cost of a ticket to the Line Discovery Fund, and I am inviting you to do the same. Time is money, people put both to good use. Skip Kraven the Hunter and give those box office dollars to the big kitties instead. In the 10 short months since I wrote my Medium web review pondering the poison chalice of a superhero role in 2024, both Robert Downey Jr. and Chris Evans, the pillars upon which the MCU was built, have announced their imminent return to Marvel movies. Perhaps it's too early to judge whether this is yet another example of wheels frantically spinning in the blockbuster mood, but the lukewarm reception to every single superhero property since Spider-Man No Way Home seems to suggest the center cannot hold. Sony, for their part, have been trying to work out how to make a successful superhero film for the past decade. Although they own the right to Spider-Man, the complex nature of their licensing agreement with Marvel means there are certain characters they cannot choose without mutual sign-off. Now Sony owned the right to 900 comic book characters, so what's the issue? Well, most of those 900 characters are related in some way to Spider-Man, exes, family members, classmates, colleagues, alternates, reality version, and of course villains. Abstracting them from Spider-Man is difficult when many exist poorly within his orbit. It did work, however, with the Venom franchise, which netted Sony over $1 billion at the box office despite a lukewarm critical response. A passion project of Tom Hardy, it's undoubtedly his unique performance that gave the Venom films their spark, something very much not present in their other spin-off attempts, Morbius and Medium Web. But third time's a charm, right? What could possibly go wrong with Kraven the Hunter? Most famous as the Spidey villain obsessed with pelt and poaching, Sergei Kravinoff has a long history with the web slinger dating back to 1964 and it constantly causing him a brother despite his lack of superpowers. His motivation is to be the world's greatest hunter, which for some reason makes him view Spider-Man as the ultimate prey. Has he tried putting a glass over him and covering it with a postcard? Updated for a solo cinematic adventure, Kraven is played by Aaron Taylor Johnson, who Hollywood continually seems unable to work out what to do with, and now develops lion-related superpowers as a teenager after being attacked by a big cat during a hunting trip in North Ghana with his brother Dmitry and father Nikolai in a cravat doing a Russian accent. He is saved by a young Calypso, played as an adult by Ariana DeBose, who gives him a potion her grandmother gifted her 5 minutes previously. After waking up with lion power, Sergei swiftly rejects his father's invitation to inherit his gangster empire and flees to the Russian countryside, where he appears to live unsupervised for the next 16 years in a Pinterest-worthy coveted observation tower. Also, he can telepathically communicate with animals. Meanwhile, geeky Alexei Satovich has been biding his time after a slide from Nikolai during that ill-fated hunting trip. He is adopted the moniker of Reno, allowing up producers, which gave him impenetrably grey skin and wants to replace the Kravinoff at the top of the criminal food chain. He enlists the help of a mysterious assassin known as the Foreigner, who has his own personal beef with Kraven and kidnaps his brother Dmitry. Fred Hatchinger having a wild 2024 is an attempt to make Nikolai look bad. It's up to Kraven to hunt them down. It's all desperately silly. Perhaps that would be lost of an issue if the film's writer, stars, and director leaned into it a title, as in the Venom films, but there's an air of seriousness about Kraven the Hunter that make it a slog that cannot be saved by a surprising number of violent executions, including one involving a bear trap. It doesn't help that Kraven lacks a sense of purpose beyond hunting. People be clarified he is an animal lover in this iteration, and the relationship between the Kravinoff brother feels painfully underdeveloped to the extent other characters have to explain how much they care about each other. Exposition is not so much clunky as it is violently hacked up onto the carpet like a hairball. If there's one thing to say in Kraven the Hunter defense, it's that it is not quite as bad as Morbius or Madame Web. At least everyone here seems to be enjoying themselves a little rather than looking like they are doing community service at a failing theater. But professionalism cannot make up for a weak plot, comically backed animal CGI, cringly dialogue, and the unfortunate truth that Aaron Taylor Johnson's look like the Nightman when he goes beast mode. Little White Lies is committed to championing great movies and the talented people who make them. Kraven the Hunter is an extraordinary creature. From its earliest report, it was confounding, bringing together celebrated independent filmmaker J.J. Cardone and a superhero genre that seems to scoff at the grounded dramas that made this filmmaker's name. Then come the Red Band trailer, where the eponymous anti-hero swam around his fuse like an unleashed animal biting off one man's nose before spiting it meaningful at another. Sony Pictures seems to declare here is a R-rated superhero movie that goes hard and brings fresh blood to the genre. But then came the bumps, the release date bumps. Kraven the Hunter was originally scheduled to premiere in January of 2023. Then it was bumped to October 2023, then it was bumped yet again to August of 2024 and then to December. Finally, the film is coming out, and the delay seems to be explained by the final result of Frankenstein's monster of a film with scams that are not only showing, they are practically pottering from on screen, and yet I might just love this hot mess of movie because of all its failing. It's managed something that's been increasingly difficult as oversaturation drives the superhero story into the ground. Kraven the Hunter is surprising, truly wild fun, and definitely not for kids. This is not the Kraven that Spider-Man fans are expecting. The screenplay by Richard Wing, Art Markham, and Matt Holloway radically reimagines the supervillain who is chiefly known as a big game hunter who wears a lion head as a gaudy vest. In Kraven the Hunter, Sergei Kravinoff is a vigilante who abhors hurting animals and instead tracks and kills men, significantly Batman like poachers and armed dealers. The strange sons of a crumbling Kingspan and intriguingly surely Russell Crowe's Sergei lives off the grid in the wilderness, rebelling against his father's villainy by balancing the scales with his own bare hands and mystical superpowers that allow him to scale skyscrapers, elect superhuman strength, and run on all fours. And yes, that is often as goofy looking as you had expect, but also accelerating for exactly that reason. Kraven may look ridiculous running like a charging gorilla down a city street in pursuit of kidnappers who is snatched his damned brother the mystery. But after years of noble pausing, it's fun to watch a hero cut loose in such a non-regal way. While rejecting the values of his gangster father, Kramer seeks to save his brother from rival Kingspan Alexei the Reno Nivola, acceleratingly eating his film alive in every frame. Along the way, he will find an ally in Calypso, a liar whose secrets include mystical magic potion and skill with a crossbow, and an enemy in the Foreigner, a supervillain whose power appeared to be counting while dressed as a torchback. Kraven the Hunter has way more plot than it can handle. Chandor's films aims to be a story of father and son and a gangster drama and a superhero movie. And there's a lot to pull off even with a runtime of 2 hours and 7 minutes. This means Kraven the Hunter is fitfully focused on backstory, spending an egregious amount of screen time on Sergei's traumatic teen years but explaining the Reno's unique ability in a grueling monologue. As for the Faunard, Calypso or Camelon, a dense knowledge of Spider-Man comics might come in handy there, as their backstories are along to with gesture to other characters too Vigo for many to grasp. The movie only fitfully cares about the why or what's happening, focusing more intensely on the what the fuck of it all. So, if for instance you wonder how a man living off the grid without any apparent income has access to a private helicopter and pilot willing to traverse a blizzard, you will be disappointed. But honestly, the glaring plot holes did not bother me. I relished every odd curious moment that breaks the mold, like the ultra-violent bloody assassination that Craven carries out Collie, the unapologetic outing that Chandor lends offers of Jensen's scalped saps, broad shoulder and taut backside, and the chaotic player of Hatchinger switching from sibling little brother to sog-long act, as his character's unique ability to mimic voices allow him to sing Harry Styles, Ozzy Osbourne, and Tony Bennett with equal ease and flair. Other elements, however, are outreach in a bad way. The post-production struggle are clear in Kraven the Hunter. We will fix it in post in an age in Hollywood that, as a former video editor, always makes me cringe. Some mistake cannot be prepared over with computer graphics or additional dialogue recording, but that does not stop Chandor's team for trying. Like in Medium Web, there's an outstanding amount of noticeable ADR in the movie, made clear by how often the month of speaker is not on screen or how the sound doesn't quite match the setting. This suggests that while cuts are being made to the movie, the dialogue needed to be changed to make Kraven the Hunter comprehensible. Such studio change might be overlooked by many, but in one scene in Kraven's cozy glass art there's a moment where post-production fails so spectacularly that Ariana DeBose's mouth is bizarrely out of position as she speaks. As it is were glued on wrong, it looks like bad AI or maybe a messy composite job done by a human technician. But it's jarring to say the least. Other CGI sloppenings like when a wandering Kramer looks more robbery than flesh and bone is less offensive and maybe even charming when seen with a nostalgic eye that remembers Sony's first Spider-Man trilogy fondly. I don't care that Kraven the Hunter is a bad movie. Plot-wise, it's barely cohesive. Technically, it's a disaster, but to Chandor's credit, every single actor in this movie commits to the bit. As the loathsomely cruel Father Cruz is low-key hilarious, spitting out the word weakness so much that it infectious across the film. So many characters say weakness that if this were a drinking game trigger, no one would make it out of the theater alive. Taylor Jensen, who's previously played the speedy but traumatized Quicksilver in the MCU and the voice as Kick-Ass in Glorious in his incarnation of Kraven, who is both capable of horrendous violence and admirably serenity. The English actor offers an almost busy open spin. The Hunter explains him self-imposed mission to Calypso, talking about assassination as casualty as one night their launch plan, but when opposite crews, a wounded sharpness creeps in, giving the family drama at the film's core emotional weight. As for Hatchinger, who has been crushing it this year, with noteworthy turn in the action comedy Thelma and two very strongly different critical heralded historical drama Necklace Boy and Gladiator 2 is a brilliant counterpart to this on-screen family, where Cruz is badly moco and Taylor Johnson is swankerly confident, hatching her cowards and smile that a plea for affection that is heartbreaking in its earnestness. When he sings at the piano, you see the moments of rare bliss when he feels valued, are also the moment where he is pretending to be someone else, and that too sting. DeBose relishes the broad shouldered power suit for her high-powered layers, effective a walk that feels like her own spin on being king of the jungle. As Calypso, she brings a modern awareness to this tale of men who will do anything but go to therapy, and she goes with suffocation and a bit of cheek. Meanwhile, Abbott paints the foreigner as a pretentious and vengeful weirdo who relishes power to dodge and strike, while his victims are stunned again by counting. I guess he is so absolutely swarmy in the role that it's a psycho player to watch him, whether he is slaughtering a prison guard or stealing a bite of steak from a captive's plate. Kraven the Hunter movie ending explained. Kraven the Hunter, does Sony's villain spin-off set up a Doom sequel? Kraven the Hunter has officially stalked and way into theater, and it sure is something. In Corridor's reviews of Sony reportedly fanner Spider-Man villain spin-off written by yours truly, I fully admitted that the Aaron Taylor Johnson's led film features the Marvel Universe greatness. Hunter is a misfire is just about every way, from the writing to the character to the technical problems. If an offbeat send-off for Sony experiment regardless of how you slice it. However, despite Sony seeing the impending practical storm brawling, Our Lady Kraven the Hunter follows a trend set up by its similarly condemned siblings Mobius and Madame Web. It set up a sequel. Yes, in addition to having the mandatory CGI fire there just has to be in every superhero film today, the end of Kraven the Hunter plants plenty of seeds for a potential follow-up despite defying the Marvel tradition for having an end credit scene. Even though the chances of Kraven the Hunter getting a sequel are near zero, we will still happily explain how Sergei Kravinoff's story ends. Kraven faces the Foreign after slaughtering most of Reno's goons. The climax of Kraven the Hunter begins when the charismatic crime kingpin Alexei Sidewich, also known as the Reno, and the mysterious assassin known as the Foreigner close in on Kraven base to set a trap of the Hunter. Of course, they are bringing Kraven's abducted brother Dmitri with them, and now Kraven and Calypso are preparing for a bloody final battle. Once the two anti-heroes are geared up, it's open season on Reno's goons. In what is probably the only real playable action sequence in Kraven the Hunter, we see the title character using his would-be assailants' oven traps against them, making quick and easy work for the evil henchpeople. However, things get complicated when Kraven comes face to face with the Foreigner for the first time, and the villain's unique hypnotic ability seems to be doing a number on all Kraven. After making Kraven hallucinate that he is being surrounded by Spider, it's look all but over for our dear hero. Thankfully, Calypso arrives just in time to put an arrow right between the Foreigner's eyes, quickly getting Kraven back on his feet with another dose of her mysterious potion she had up her sleeve. Alexis unleashes the Reno to have a final showdown with Kraven. Thinking Kraven has been dealt with, Alexei begins to make a hasty escape. Little does he realize that the tenacious hunter is still very much alive and is leading a stamping herd of cattle toward him. Kraven does this because he can talk to animals, at least I think he can. I don't know, since it's just one of many things the movie is not clear on. Realizing he needs to pull out all the stops, Alexei decided to show Kraven the monstrous ability that a mysterious New York doctor named Miles Warren gifted him. De-chatting his medicine, Alexei becomes the fires and mutated Reno, having near indestructible skin and incredible strength. He very nearly gets the upper hand over Kraven, but Sergei is able to stab Reno in his weak point and mortally kill the villain. Kraven does stop and enrage Dmitri from finishing Reno off, but the seeds of a new villain have already been planted. One villain dies and another is spun in the grand finale of Kraven the Hunter. After Reno succumbs to his wounds, Kraven puts together that a different puppeteer was working behind the scenes. That puppet master turns out to be his own cruel father, Nikolai Kravinoff, who pitted Kraven against Reno so his son could take out his biggest rival. Kraven has had enough of his father's mind games and he walks away while a bear mauls Nikolai to death, with nature finally taking its revenge on the vindictive mobster. This should seemingly allow Kraven to ride off into the sunset with Dmitri, but our hero's story is about to come to a tragic end. Instead of liquidating their father's assets, Dmitri has now taken over Nikolai Empire. Not only that, but Dmitri has also paid a visit to the mysterious Dr. Warren and has dubbed himself the Chameleon, having the ability to transform into anyone who wants, though it doesn't seem like he has the problem of replicating height just yet. The final shot sees Kraven get his comic accurate puffy jacket as he wonders the possibility of having to hunt his beloved brother in a sequel that will likely never be made. Kraven the Hunter ending. The movie is released in 2024 and how Aaron Taylor Johnson Marvel character became the villain from the comic. Kraven the Hunter ends about as well as one would expect considering the rest of Sony's Spider-Man universe movies starring Aaron Taylor Johnson as the titular Sergei skin of the movie and sees Kraven fully becoming the Spider-Man villain he is known to be in the comics, while also featuring some fun secondary reveal that said Kraven's villainous evolution is not really as satisfying as many were hoping it would be. In Kraven the Hunter, Sergei Kravinoff's history and origin with his father's Nikolai are explored as well as his mission in the present day to save his half-brother Dmitri from the Reno. However, the ending does feature some strange character choices based on what was established earlier in the new Marvel film. With that in mind, here's Kraven the Hunter's ending explained as well as what it might mean for the future. Kraven the Hunter's final shot explained. In years after Sergei saves his brother and kills both Reno and Nikolai, Kraven returned to his father's house after his brother tells him that their father left him something. Opening a box, Sergei discovers that Nikolai took the head of the lion that nearly killed him as a child and had it made into a vest. As such, Aaron Taylor Johnson Sergei resembled the Kraven of the original Marvel comics once he put on the lion's head vest and sits down, resting his chin on one arm. Kraven the Hunter ends with Sergei mirroring Kraven's classic look and pose for the comic. This signifies his full evolution into the Spider-Man villain he is known to be in the comics, giving him the nearly requisite comics accurate costume look in the third act that audience has come to expect from the superhero movie genre. Beyond the comic book significance, Kraven putting on the vest also signifies a darker turn for the character. The accompanying note from Sergei's late father contained Nikolai claim that he and Kraven were the same legendary hunter to be dreaded. Despite Sergei's hate for his father, it seems his letter combined with his superior conversation with Dmitri, who by similar sentiments motivated Kraven to embrace the path his father wanted for him. The one of the hunter to that and Sergei apparent acceptance that he is not good man is the only reason that makes sense as to why he put the vest on to begin with. Now that Sergei has officially become the Kraven seen in the comics, he could theoretically be brought back as a Spider-Man villain at some point. That said, it's recently been reported that Kraven the Hunter is the last of Sony's SSU films that do not feature the iconic web-slinger. The likelihood of Taylor Jensen's Kraven ever getting to fight Spider-Man feels very slim, unless something multiversal were to happen in the MCU where his path crossed with Tom Holland's Spider-Man or something like Sony's universe ending up combining with the MCU in the aftermath of Secret Wars. Nikolai Kravinoff death explained did Kraven kill him? Before putting on the vest and the 1 year jump, Kraven is shown meeting with his father in the forest after Reno is killed and Dmitri saved. Unwilling to become his father, hire and take over his criminal empire, Sergei secretly removes the bullets from Nikolai's rifle. Likewise, it's heavily implied that Sergei influenced the greasy bear to attack and maul his father, just like he influences the Boston Heart to attack the convoy during the fight with Reno and the Wolf during Sergei prison breakout in the Kraven the Hunter opening scene. Having learned from Reno that Nikolai was the one who set him up and put him in Alexei's Satvish sight, Sergei's family went after his father after years of keeping his distance. This was because Nikolai knowingly used one son to kill a threat he could not, while also risking the other son as acceptable collateral damage. As such, Kraven could not longer abide by his father's darkness and the pain he brought into the world. Hence the bear attack. How Dmitri became chameleon explained. Sergei's meeting with Dmitri in Kraven the Hunter's final scene revealed that Dmitri has taken over both their father empire and Reno's asset. Likewise, Dmitri also reveals that he met with the same New York doctor who gave Satwich his strength, arms, and hardened skin. Now having the ability to take on the appearance of anyone at will, Dmitri officially became the classic Spider-Man villain known as the Chameleon, a master of disguise who once used old-fashioned masks and advanced tech before similarly gaining inherent abilities to shapeshift, just like Marvel new on-screen Chameleon. The Chameleon classic all-white hat from the comic can also be seen as Dmitri changes his face at will. Like was the New York Doctor, his question is none other than Gentex Miles Warren, aka the Jackal. Warren is most famous for investigating Spider-Man's clone saga in the comics with the creation of multiple clones, most notably the Scarlet Spider, who it come to be known as Ben Reilly and Kenny Parker. It is truly is an old decision why Dmitri chose to take over his father's empire at the end of Kraven the Hunter. Despite accusing Sergei of being just like their father whom they both hated, Dmitri still chooses to become him all the same. This is even more baffling when considering how much he wanted to become someone else earlier, and especially now with his new power. The only somewhat decent explanation for this choice is likely that there's still an ongoing cycle of abuse where Dmitri ultimately still wants to make Nikolai proud, even after his death and despite all the pain and torment it caused him. What happened to Calypso? During the battle with Reno and his men, Calypso kills the foreigner before giving Sergei more of her family portion ahead of his fight with Stavish. However, Calypso is not seen again, making her future uncertain. That said, one could possibly safely assume that Calypso went back to work in London and would likely work with Kraven again to help him track down more targets in the future. It also stands to reason that Sergei wants to learn more about the potion that saves his life twice, especially after the confession that Calypso had more of the accelerate. So, what is the real meaning of the Hunter's ending? Ultimately, the real meaning behind Kraven the Hunter ending is somewhat hard to fully decipher considering the journal half-baked nature of the third act, as well as Sergei and Dmitri arguably uncharacteristic decision in the wake of their father's death. This is particularly true of Kraven's decision to not only wear his father's gift, but also killing Nikolai in the first place. For example, it might have made more sense of Kraven to break the cycle of darkness by sparing his father's life. It certainly does seem as though Kraven the Hunter's ending suffers from being far too rushed. It simply does not fully pay off the potential that had been set up earlier in the new Marvel movie. Additionally, it also could have made more sense for Sergei to decode the West after trying it on, rather than all too quickly embracing the path his father laid out for him in the last 2 minutes of Kraven the Hunter. At any rate, it certainly does seem as though Kraven the Hunter's ending suffers from being far too rushed. It simply does not fully pay off the potential that had been set up earlier in the new Marvel movie.